You ever notice how some things don't belong where they are? Like a coffee mug on a piano, or an umbrella in the shower. That's what did it for me. That's what pulled the first thread loose. A red napkin. I was vacuuming. Not because I'm a neat freak. I just couldn't sit still that morning. I kept pacing around the house like my own shadow was whispering something behind my back. I was anxious for no good reason. That's what I told myself. Then I found it. A small, square, bright red cloth napkin, tucked under the couch. Our couch is beige. We don't own red napkins. We've never owned red napkins. I picked it up like it was something dangerous. There was a lipstick mark on it. Not Daphne's usual muted peach. This was bold. Statement read. The kind she used to wear when we first started dating, before she decided subtle was more work-appropriate. I wish I could say I was surprised. But the truth is, I wasn't. Things hadn't been right for a while. Conversations that died before they started. Half-hugs. Cold dinners. Late nights at work. Still, I needed something solid. I needed proof that I wasn't just paranoid or turning into one of those sad guys who reads too much into everything. So when she mentioned her office was throwing a casual Friday night team celebration, I acted normal. Smiled. Nodded. Asked what she was planning to wear, like it mattered. She said it was low-key, just her team and a few upper-level folks. I offered to drive her. She declined. She always declines now. So I waited. I waited until I knew she'd be deep into cocktails and clinking glasses. Then I drove myself there. The venue was one of those rooftop places with glass walls and mood lighting. The kind of spot you pick when you want the city lights to distract from the lies. I didn't go through the front. I took the service elevator. Staff thought I was maintenance. No one stopped me. From the upper landing, I could see down into the event space. White tablecloths. Flickering candles. People in ties and blouses, pretending they liked each other. And there she was. Daphne. My wife. My person. Standing by the corner bar. Laughing. Leaning against a man I didn't recognize. His hand rested on the small of her back like it had always belonged there. Her drink was in the other hand, her lips stained with that same red. The napkin. I pressed my hand to the glass. Something about seeing her like that. So alive, so open, it crushed me. That wasn't the woman who came home every night and sighed before saying hello. That wasn't the wife who gave me 2-second kisses on the cheek. That was someone else entirely. She whispered something into his ear, then turned and walked toward the private terrace door. He followed. She opened it and stepped out. With him. Gone. Like I never existed. I didn't move. I just stood there in that cold hallway above it all, watching the rest of the party laugh and drink and sparkle. Watching the weight of everything I built shift in silence. When I finally turned to leave, the security guard nodded at me. Rough night, he asked, like I was just some tired guest who'd had too much wine. I didn't answer. He didn't know I just watched my marriage walk out into the night with someone else. That napkin is still in my glove compartment. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe because it's the only thing in this whole mess that didn't lie to me. The house smelled like her when I got back. That familiar, sharp floral scent she always used to wear sparingly, but now seemed to drown in. It clung to everything. The hallway, the cushions, even the air itself, like it was trying to erase me. I sat in the car for nearly 15 minutes, the red napkin still folded on the passenger seat like a dead bird. I thought about throwing it out the window. I thought about lighting it on fire. Instead, I opened the glove compartment and shoved it inside, next to some old parking tickets and expired chewing gum. I told myself I didn't need it anymore. I had seen enough. And yet, I didn't feel angry. Not in the way movies or books tell you you're supposed to. I didn't want to scream or punch a wall. What I felt was much worse. I felt small. Like someone had quietly redrawn the walls of my life while I wasn't looking, and now everything was unfamiliar. At 12:22 a.m., she came home. I was on the couch pretending to be asleep, but I was listening. Every sound. The jingle of her keys, the slow twist of the lock, the careful closing of the door, too careful. Like she didn't want to wake a man who had no idea what she'd done. Her heels came off one at a time. Soft thuds on the hardwood floor. I waited for her to tiptoe past the living room, but instead, she hovered in the doorway. You're still up? I opened my eyes like I just stirred awake. Couldn't sleep. She smiled. It looked like effort. The party was boring. Mostly people from the New York office. You didn't miss much. Her voice was steady. Practiced. I almost laughed. I almost said, "Oh, you mean the party with the rooftop bar and the tall guy in the vest?" I almost told her I'd watched her slip into the dark with someone else's hands on her waist. I almost did, but I didn't. I just nodded and asked, "Was the food any good?" She shrugged and walked away. Didn't eat. Another lie. I'd seen her nibble from his plate. I'd seen him wipe a crumb from her lip with his thumb like they'd done it a dozen times before. The next morning, she left for a strategy session out in Clifton. Supposedly an all-day retreat with the marketing team. I waited for her to leave, then checked the dry cleaner bag hanging on the inside of the closet door. The black dress she'd worn to the party was gone. She hadn't even bothered to hang it back. That afternoon, I called Brent, the guy who used to work in the same department as her before he moved to logistics. We'd only ever exchanged a few words at office picnics, but I remembered he was always a little too observant. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Just wondering, do you know a guy at her firm? Tall, maybe early 40s, usually wears vests? Kinda slick." Brent paused for just a second too long. "You mean Declan?" "Declan." That name hit me like a whisper behind a closed door. "Yeah," I muttered. "That might be him." There was a beat of silence. "Look, Elwood." I probably shouldn't say anything, but I heard stuff. You know how it is offices talk. They say he gets around. The kind of guy who mentors junior staff a little too closely, if you get me. I got him. I ended the call with a thank you I didn't mean and sat in the silence that followed, heart pounding like I'd stolen something. That night, I looked through our shared photo folder, something I hadn't touched in months. I don't even know why. Maybe I was looking for a sign, a warning I missed. And then I found it. Buried between a Thanksgiving shot and a blurry image of our dog. A photo I don't remember taking. Daphne, sitting at a rooftop bar. Hair curled. Lipstick red. Holding a cocktail I'd never seen before. Her phone on the table, face down. A man's hand resting on her knee, partially cropped but visible. The timestamp was from 3 weeks ago. The same weekend she told me she was visiting her sister in Albany. I stared at it for what felt like hours. And all I could think was how calm she looked. Like she wasn't just cheating on me, she was replacing me, one night at a time. And I had been so damn polite about it. So quiet. So safe. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark until morning. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I know I'm not letting this slide anymore. I won't confront her, not yet. Not until I see how deep this thing goes. Not until I understand how long she's been smiling at me with a stranger's name in her mouth. I didn't sleep that night. I tried. I laid in bed with my back to her, eyes wide open, listening to the quiet rhythm of her breathing. I used to find it comforting, how she'd hum softly in her sleep or turn over and throw her arm across me like a sleepy child. But now, every exhale sounded like a countdown, each one pushing me closer to a line I couldn't uncross. At 3:16 a.m., she shifted and whispered his name. Not Declan. No, not that easy. She said D, like some intimate abbreviation, soft and casual, like it had passed her lips 1,000 times. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My throat tightened like a noose. The next morning, I waited until she left for her strategy session, the same one that had magically turned into an overnight retreat. I played dumb, waved goodbye, asked if she needed gas money like an idiot. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "You're the sweetest." Sweet. No one respects sweet. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table with her old iPad. She hadn't used it in months, maybe years. It was stuck under a pile of mail and a bag of expired flour. But it still turned on. I didn't expect much, maybe some old Pinterest boards or fitness apps. But then I found the synced photo archive. Not her camera roll, the cloud backups. And that's where I saw it. A video. Just 13 seconds long. Low light, grainy, clearly taken on a phone. It showed the back of a man's head, definitely Declan's, leaning in, whispering into her ear while she smiled at the camera. Someone else must have recorded it. Probably a coworker. But what mattered wasn't what he said. It was how she looked. Like she belonged to that moment. Like she was exactly where she wanted to be. Not with me. I closed the iPad and sat for an hour, maybe longer, just listening to the tick of the wall clock and the hum of the refrigerator. I kept waiting for the feeling to pass, for the hurt to dull into something manageable. But it didn't. It grew. Every second I stayed in that house felt like a slow-motion collapse. I needed air. I needed answers. So I drove to her office. Not to confront her, not yet, but just to see something real, to confirm that this wasn't all in my head. Her firm had recently moved into a new high-rise downtown, one of those glass towers with a digital directory in the lobby. I didn't go in. I parked across the street, slouched down in my seat, and watched the entrance. After 30 minutes, I saw her. But she wasn't alone. She stepped out of the revolving door beside Declan. He was holding a coffee, but she had nothing in her hands because both of hers were tucked into his coat pocket. Like she lived there. Like she belonged inside his jacket, not beside me. They walked half a block and stopped outside a dark brown door, some boutique hotel I didn't even realize was there. He punched in a code. The door opened. They slipped inside. That was 12:41 p.m. They didn't come out again until 3:09. She was fixing her hair. He was laughing. I didn't follow them. I just drove home. I was shaking so hard I had to pull over twice to keep from veering into traffic. When she returned later that evening, she told me the strategy session ran long. Blamed traffic. Blamed some intern who couldn't stop asking questions. She dropped her purse on the floor and asked if I wanted to order Thai. Thai. That's what we ordered the night she said she wanted to reconnect a few months ago. I bought wine. She wore that soft gray sweater I liked. I thought we were starting over. Now I wonder if that was just the night she started covering her tracks better. I told her I wasn't hungry and went upstairs. That night, I unlocked the spare phone I kept for work emergencies. It still had the old voicemail recorder app installed. I placed it in the hallway just outside our bedroom door and let it run. At exactly 11:23 p.m., I heard her take a call. She whispered into the receiver. Called him D. Said she missed him. Said she hated lying to me but didn't want to rock the boat just yet. Not until the timing's better. She ended the call with something I'll never forget. I wish I was there with you right now. I feel fake here. I don't even recognize this place anymore. This place. My home. Our home. I saved the audio file. I listened to it 10 times. I don't know why. Maybe I thought hearing it again would make it easier. It didn't. All I know is she's planning something. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel like the background character anymore. Something inside me is waking up. And when I finally confront her, I won't just ask why. I'll ask how long she thought I wouldn't notice. The next morning, I watched her brush her hair in front of the mirror with the same casual grace I used to find beautiful. Now it made me uneasy. There was a rhythm to her movements, almost too rehearsed, like she'd practiced every gesture for someone else's eyes. I tried to pretend I didn't hear her call Declan last night, didn't listen to her whisper that she felt fake here, that she didn't recognize this place anymore. But every time she spoke to me that morning, every smile, every glance, it felt like being fed a script written for a play I never auditioned for. When she left for work, I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the mirror, wondering how long I'd been this forgettable. It wasn't just the cheating. It was how easily I had become invisible. Like I'd melted into the background so quietly that even she didn't notice me disappearing. But that changed that afternoon. I've been thinking about it since I found that old iPad. She wasn't just careless, she was comfortable. Comfortable enough to leave behind little fragments. A video here. A lipstick napkin there. And now I needed more. Not because I wanted revenge. I didn't even know what I wanted yet. I just needed truth. Pure, uncensored, undeniable. I remembered her old MacBook, silver, scratched, always overheating. She used to use it for freelance work before the firm gave her a new laptop. She never got rid of it. Just shoved it into the top shelf of our hall closet under some winter scarves. When I pulled it down, dust floated in the air like tiny ghosts. It powered on without a problem. Typical. New devices die. The old ones just sit there, watching. The login screen asked for a password. I stared at it like it might blink first. I tried the basics. Our anniversary date. My name. Her college nickname. Nothing. Then, on a whim, I typed in the name of a dog we almost adopted 4 years ago. A little husky mix named Charlie. She loved that dog. Talked about it for weeks. We didn't adopt him because I got cold feet about the responsibility. Charlie. It worked. That felt worse than being locked out. I spent the next 2 hours digging through folders. It was mostly old writing samples, and used resumes, half-drafted blog posts. I almost gave up. But then I found a folder buried 3 subfolders deep under a bizarre name, Q1_budget_draft. Inside it were images, screenshots, notes, recordings. It was like stumbling into a hidden journal. But it wasn't about finances. It was about him. There were dinner reservations from months back. Sentimental photos saved from her phone. One video she'd taken of him laughing at a wine bar. One email draft labeled, for later, it read like a goodbye letter to me. Short, vague, heartless. She never sent it. Maybe she never planned to. Maybe she was waiting for something else to give. Then I opened a voice memo titled simply, Sunday night. It was her voice. Clear. Soft. Meant for no one but him. I keep looking at Elwood like he's some painting I've grown tired of. I hate that. He hasn't done anything wrong. He's been loyal and kind and small, always so small. I know I sound cruel, but I can't lie to myself anymore. I want more. I want a life that doesn't feel like a polite silence. I closed the laptop. That word, small, that was what did it. She didn't just fall out of love with me. She started looking down on me. Not because I was mean or dishonest or broken, but because I wasn't loud enough. Because I didn't take up space. Because I didn't become someone exciting in the middle of her boredom. It wasn't infidelity. It was erasure. Later that day, I watched her from across the kitchen as she poured herself a glass of wine. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, smiled, and slid it face down on the counter. Long day? I asked, forcing my voice not to shake. She nodded without looking up. You know how it is. Meetings that go nowhere. I wanted to ask if her meetings involved hotel keycards. If she wrote notes about how replaceable I felt in her life. But I didn't. Not yet. That night, while she slept, I backed up every file I found onto a flash drive. Not for leverage. For memory. For sanity. So that when I eventually confront her, she won't be able to lie her way out of it. So she can't twist the narrative like I imagined it. She once told me that the worst feeling in the world is being misunderstood. No, Daphne. The worst feeling in the world is realizing you were being slowly replaced in silence, and the only proof left behind was stored under the name of a dog we never had. I hadn't planned to open the drawer. It wasn't some elaborate search or a moment of cinematic discovery. It was just supposed to be where we kept old batteries. But maybe deep down, something guided my hand toward it. Some small part of me still trying to claw at the truth, even after I'd already seen so much. It was the middle drawer of her office desk. She always kept it locked. She said it was for client stuff, which I never questioned because that's what I didn't question, didn't push. That's probably why I'm in this mess to begin with. But that day, I noticed the key had been left in. She must have forgotten to remove it before running out to do groceries. I stared at it for a while, pacing around the room like a man considering whether to cut the red wire or the blue. My hands were shaking before I even touched the handle. Inside was a black leather-bound planner. One of those sleek, expensive ones that smelled like clean ambition and secrets. It was neatly organized by month. I flipped to January, and right there, in her looping cursive, D at the Arbor 7 p.m. No last name. No context. Just an initial and a place. But I knew. God, I knew. Every other Thursday for the last 3 months had a similar note. Sometimes a single letter. Sometimes just a heart next to a time. I flipped back to December. November. October. It kept going. Her entire affair was scheduled like dental appointments. It wasn't passion. It was management. Beneath the planner was an envelope, unsealed. Inside were printed photos. Her and Declan, sitting across from each other at some cafe. Her smiling at him like she used to smile at me, only realer, rawer, like she could finally breathe. There were pictures of them holding hands on the sidewalk, waiting in line at a food truck, even laughing in front of a bookstore I once took her to on our anniversary. I held the photos in my lap for 10 minutes. My fingers left small creases on the edges. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared. And then, underneath the envelope, I found something I wasn't expecting: an airline confirmation. 2 names, hers and his. Departure date, 3 weeks from now. Destination, Portland, Oregon. We'd never even talked about going to Portland. I checked the dates again. She was supposed to be visiting her mother that weekend. She even asked me if I could dog sit for her sister while she was away. I remember how casually she asked. I remember how proud I felt, thinking she still trusted me with things. What a joke. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I sat on the back porch with a blanket around my shoulders like an old man waiting to die. The sky was that pale, polluted gray that never quite turns to black. It just settles there, low and heavy. She came home around 9. I watched her through the kitchen window. She put the groceries away, opened a bottle of wine, and stood at the sink for a full minute staring out into the yard. I thought maybe she saw me. I hoped she did. But she didn't. She went upstairs without saying a word. And here's the worst part. I followed her 15 minutes later and pretended everything was normal. I brushed my teeth beside her, climbed into bed beside her. She said she was tired, rolled over, and within 5 minutes, she was asleep. How can someone lie next to the person they're betraying and fall asleep like that? So calm, so rested. While I lay there blinking at the ceiling, feeling my ribs pressing around a heart that didn't want to beat anymore. The next morning, I mailed a copy of the planner pages to myself. Certified delivery. Just in case. I needed a timestamp. I needed something that couldn't be erased or edited later. I don't even know why, maybe so I could look back one day and remind myself I wasn't crazy. I wish I could say this was the moment I decided to leave. But I didn't. Not yet. I wasn't ready. Not because I still loved her, no. That part had started to die quietly months ago. It was because I didn't know who I was without her. I had given her everything, including the shape of my days, the direction of my thoughts, the worth of my silence. But something was changing now. Something slow and ugly and necessary. She thought she had time. She thought I'd stay polite, stay quiet, stay small. But she had no idea what I was becoming in that silence. I didn't mean to end up at the arbor. It was a Tuesday, mid-afternoon. I had told my client I needed to push our call back due to family stuff, which wasn't a lie. I just didn't tell them what kind. I drove aimlessly, windows cracked, letting the air burn against my skin. There's a certain kind of numbness that's worse than pain, and that's exactly where I was living. Not screaming, not crying, just suspended in the space between disbelief and slow acceptance. I ended up in front of the same restaurant I'd seen scribbled in Daphne's planner more times than I could count. The Arbor. A place we'd never been together, a name she never even mentioned. Not once. And yet, she'd carved entire chapters of her second life between its white brick walls and potted olive trees. I parked and walked in like a man looking for a ghost. The hostess smiled and asked if I had a reservation. I didn't, but I gave her a name anyway. Declan, I said. She raised an eyebrow, then gestured toward a small two-seater table in the corner. Right this way. I followed her without thinking, heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted out. I sat down and scanned the space. Everything was neutral-toned, clean, curated to be forgettable. It was the kind of place where people went to pretend they were somewhere else. Where secrets weren't whispered, they were assumed. I ordered a coffee. I didn't even drink coffee. I just needed to buy time. The waitress looked confused when she returned with a check halfway through my second cup. There's been a mix-up, she said softly, placing the folded slip on the table. Sorry about that, sir. Wrong table. But if you wouldn't mind, just confirm the name on the receipt. I nodded and opened it. But it wasn't just a receipt. It was a printed bill with a note paperclipped to it, handwritten. One line. Had a great time as always. I booked next Friday for us, same room. Yours, D. There it was again. D. Short, smug, practiced. But the handwriting. That wasn't Daphne's. This was his. The waitress hovered for a moment, apologizing again, then realized her mistake and snatched it from the table. But I'd already seen enough. My hands were frozen to the table's edge, knuckles white. So this was it. Not just stolen time, not just kisses behind doors, but full weekends. Booked rooms. Thoughtful notes. The kind of effort and planning she hadn't made for us in years. And she didn't even try to hide it anymore. She was comfortable. She was settled in the betrayal. I stood up and left a tip I couldn't afford and walked out into the sunlight that now felt hostile. The street noise blurred around me. My legs moved, but I wasn't walking. I was drifting through the wreckage of my own life, and no one else even knew it was burning. I got home, showered, and sat at my desk. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure what I was even searching for. But something in me, something quiet but sharp, told me to check our joint credit card statements. The ones I never looked at because Daphne handled all the bills. And there it was. Over the last 6 months, nearly every Friday came with a transaction. Boutique hotels, spa treatments, restaurants in neighborhoods I hadn't even heard of. Some of them listed her name. Some didn't. But the timestamps lined up perfectly with every empty excuse she'd fed me. Team dinner. Outreach retreat. Overnight client prep. I downloaded everything. Compiled it into a folder. I called it Thursday Lies. Not because that's when it happened, but because that was the day she always came home early, pretending she missed me most. She was still pretending. That night, we sat on the couch and watched a movie she had picked, some rom-com with snarky dialogue and impossible charm. I didn't hear a word of it. She laughed 3 times, drank 2 glasses of wine, and rested her head against my shoulder like we were real. Like we were still a team. I almost let myself lean in. Almost let myself believe. Then her phone buzzed. She picked it up, typed fast, smirked, and tilted the screen away. I smiled too, just to match the performance. But inside me, something broke open for the last time. Not from anger. Not even from heartbreak. But from the final, irreversible understanding that I wasn't living in a marriage anymore. I was living in the echo of one. And I was done watching her rewrite history while I stayed quiet in the footnotes. It was a quiet Sunday morning when I opened her laptop bag. I didn't even have a plan anymore. My mind had long abandoned the question of right or wrong. It was survival now. The kind of searching you do when your gut already knows the answer, but your heart is the last one catching up. I was looking for anything that might explain how we got here. How the woman who used to cry when we watched cheesy wedding vows now lived double lives in boutique hotels. There, nestled between a half-eaten granola bar and a lip gloss I didn't recognize, was a small rose gold flash drive. No label. No keychain. Just tossed in like it was useless. But people don't carry around useless things. Especially not Daphne. I slipped it into my pocket and waited until she left for her yoga class, another routine she recently picked up that had nothing to do with fitness and everything to do with an excuse to disappear for 2-hour stretches. When the door shut behind her, I plugged the flash drive into my computer. It buzzed to life. One folder, archive. Inside, dozens of documents. Receipts. Itineraries. Type schedules. A packing list that included things like Dee's favorite tie and the shampoo that smells like honeysuckle. I scrolled until I hit the media files. Hidden deep in nested folders, like Russian dolls of infidelity. Videos. I paused. My finger hovered over the first one. For a moment, the screen reflected my own eyes, bloodshot, unfamiliar. I don't even remember clicking play. But suddenly, there she was. Daphne. Wearing that soft blue sweater I bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. Only it wasn't our home. The background was a hotel. Different lighting. Different furniture. Declan's voice came from off-screen. Low, casual, like this was their normal. She laughed at something he said. Tossed her hair the same way she used to when we were dating. The screen shook slightly as she walked over and kissed him. Then the camera was covered, smothered, probably by his hand. Darkness. Muffled sounds. Intimacy that didn't belong to me anymore. Maybe it never did. I stopped the video. I didn't delete it. I just sat there, staring at the file name. Sundaybliss_final.mp4. Final. Like they'd been editing versions. Like this was the perfected cut. That hit me harder than anything else. I clicked through more. Emails saved as PDFs. He wrote to her like they'd known each other forever. Called her my peace and my real life. She wrote back that she hated having to act when she was home. She said I had a soft heart, and that made it harder, but she couldn't live inside quietness anymore. That word again. Quiet. Like I was the silence she needed to escape. I copied everything. Saved it in 2 separate locations. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted to preserve the truth before she had the chance to bury it again under smiles and deflections. Later that day, she came home cheerful, sun-kissed from a fake yoga class. She asked if I wanted to go out for lunch. Some new Italian place she'd read about. I said sure. Played along. We sat on the patio, birds chirping, the waiter too chipper for a place that overcharged for bruschetta. She ordered a glass of wine. I didn't. Halfway through her salad, she said, "You've been quiet lately." I nearly laughed out loud. I smiled instead. Just thinking. About what? I wanted to say, about how you chose him over me and thought I'd never notice. About how your flash drive tells a better version of our story than you ever did. About how I was never supposed to be the detective in our life, but now I know more than you think I do. But I just said, about how fast things can change. She nodded like she understood. She didn't. When we got home, she kissed me on the cheek before going upstairs. That same rehearsed kiss she used to give when she came home late, tasting faintly of wine and lies. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my hands. They looked older. Maybe I was older now. Not in years, but in miles. Emotional mileage. Worn from all the silence I'd carried without complaint. That night, I emailed myself everything from the flash drive. Then I encrypted it and locked it with a password I wouldn't forget. He doesn't know. It was time she started wondering if maybe I did. And tomorrow, she would. The next morning started like any other. She hummed in the bathroom. The scent of her perfume filled the hallway. She kissed me goodbye with that same empty sweetness. And for the first time, I didn't flinch. I just watched her walk out the door, heels clicking down the steps like a ticking clock. But the difference today? I wasn't the man she thought I still was. After she left, I got dressed, not in my usual wrinkled hoodie or faded jeans. I wore the navy shirt she once said brought out my eyes, back when she still noticed things like that. I shaved. I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't see a doormat. I saw a man who had finally made a decision, and I followed through. I drove to the lawyer's office. My appointment had been scheduled for days. I'd already provided every document, every record, every receipt. The planner, the recordings, even the hotel emails, I brought it all. They didn't need to hear the whole story. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. We drafted the papers. I asked for a clean split, but with very clear boundaries. No joint assets. No shared bank accounts. No second chances. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. The kind she tried to steal from me. Then I went home, packed a single suitcase, grabbed the dog, and left. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I didn't leave a dramatic note. I simply left a printed photo on the kitchen table. The one I found in the planner. The one where she was looking at Declan like she'd never looked at me. I didn't caption it. Didn't need to. Taped to the back was a note that just said, "You were right. I was quiet. But you should have listened closer." Then I disappeared. I stayed with a college buddy 2 towns over, Calvin, the kind of guy who always had beer in the fridge and didn't ask questions unless you invited them. I told him the basics. He offered me his guest room and the spare key without a word. That night, I sat on the porch with his mutt sleeping under my feet, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel like I was holding my breath. The air felt different. Real. Like I was finally standing in my own story instead of hiding in someone else's shadow. Days passed. I didn't hear from her. Then, a week later, she texted, "Where are you? Can we talk?" I didn't reply. Then came another. "Please. I didn't expect this. I messed up. I just need to explain." But there was nothing left to explain. She'd already told her side, with her calendar entries, her love notes, her hotel check-ins, her silence. And I had listened. I had listened so closely I heard everything. What she hadn't expected, what none of them ever expect, is that the quiet ones watch. We wait. We feel it all. And when we finally move, it's with clarity that can't be reversed. Now, I've moved into a small, sunlit apartment downtown. It's not much, but it's mine. I signed up for a pottery class, something I'd joked about for years but never dared to do. I walk the dog twice a day. I sleep through the night. And every morning, when I brew my coffee, I no longer feel like I'm brewing it for someone who doesn't see me. I still think of her sometimes. But it doesn't hurt like it used to. It just reminds me how far I've come from being the man who mistook silence for safety. I may have been the quiet one in our story, but now I'm writing the ending. And it doesn't belong to her anymore. It belongs to me.